Almost a month ago, as of writing the script for this video, the much-awaited sequel to Nintendo's 2007 installation into the Legend of Zelda series, Tears of the Kingdom, came out. You see, Breath of the Wild is probably one of my favorite games of all time. I spent every waking hour of my summer vacation of 2018 in Hyrule as this androgynous short boy. I seriously love it. I haven't played Tears of the Kingdom yet, but what I have done is watched 2 streamers and a YouTuber play it for hours upon hours, and if you have a problem with me giving my opinion based on that, then watch this Nakey Jakey video and shut up. Anyways, I do think Tears of the Kingdom is a great game, and I'm looking forward to playing it whenever I get to it. In fact, I'm pretty sure that once I play it, I may even regard it as one of my favorite games of all time as well, but I can't help but say this. It misses something that Breath of the Wild has, something that really made me fall in love with the game, and something that is quite challenging to explain why it is so special. Just to be clear, this is not a critique of Tears of the Kingdom, since it's not fair to judge the game based on something that it isn't trying to do. But what I would like to tell you is this special something. And to do that, we need to look at how both the games open. Tears of the Kingdom begins after a couple of unspecified years right after the events of Breath of the Wild, although judging from a side quest involving the daughter of a couple we bring together in Breath of the Wild as a part of a side quest, I'd say at least 5 years since. It starts with Link and Zelda exploring a cave containing murals of a prophecy. They stumble upon Ganondorf, and Zelda's thrust back in time, and Link's rescued by a magic right hand. Basically, this game has a proper introduction of the central heroes and villains, and it also establishes the end goal of the game, which is to defeat Ganondorf and protect Hyrule, and also find Princess Zelda. It's clean and it's simple to understand, but looking at Breath of the Wild, there is a very big difference. Since Breath of the Wild was the first major Zelda game in around 5 years, it had a duty to set up a new world for the players new to the franchise, and oh, what did it do? Well, of course it starts with Link in his underwear waking up in an unfamiliar room with all his memories gone and making his way outside to the title card. Whereas the title card of Tears of the Kingdom appears later as we fall from a sky island onto another. The difference here is pretty apparent. Breath of the Wild uses its opening to create an atmosphere of mystery and wonder. As a result, Breath of the Wild was much more personal and emotional, as unlike in Tears of the Kingdom, Link in Breath of the Wild is not a character, as his memories are completely gone, making him about the same as we are. The title card building into the mystery, as it shows us the span of the map as well as the ominous looking castle ahead, and most importantly, it shows us a glimpse of the Temple of Time. The Zelda series is known for its use of time as an emotional concept. Ocarina of Time using the time skip to convey a sense of dread as we see the happy and charming little place of Castletown transform into a nightmarish excrement.jpg texture. Hell, even Tears of the Kingdom has weird time loops that are used to develop its main characters. But personally, Breath of the Wild has the most unique use of this technique because of this. As you make your way outside after talking to this old man who totally does not look like King Rome Bosphoramus Hyrule, you stumble into the Temple of Time. The Temple of Time is an iconic setting in a lot of the Zelda games, and here what we see is a ruin that's slowly being overtaken by moss and monsters. A chunk of the roof has collapsed inwards, the pillars holding the temple too have taken considerable amount of damage, and some have broken down completely. The windows have shattered, and ivy has made a significant amount of progress in covering all of the temple's walls, or at least what's remaining of the walls. There are multiple ruin sites in just the Great Plateau, from the broken bridge on your way back from Karyanis trials to the structure inside of which you find the bomb trials to these ruined guardians, out of which some are still functioning. These ruins feel like larger than life entities of history. When I came across these ruins, I felt a weird feeling, something that I can only liken to the popular liminal space feeling, but not in a scary or unsettling way. There are these melancholic structures which tell us their own stories of the numerous civilians that may have walked, talked, and slept in and around these ruins a century ago. In fact, the whole game is centered around this concept. You go around the map and meet people and slowly piece together what happened 100 years ago and what you need to do. These ruins are a very interesting entity throughout the game. For one, they help us build this unique atmosphere of practically being an outsider and stumbling upon structures that are evidence of common life a century ago that you know nothing about and has seemingly almost completely disappeared. Secondly, they stand as a direct reminder of the evil that lurks over the kingdom. The main villain of the game, Ganon, is a sort of a symbol for calamity. I mean, yeah, he's literally called Calamity Ganon. He represents a general threat to civilizations. He represents death itself. The ruins exist to remind us of his existence, to remind us of Link's unique position in the history of Hyrule. But getting into why ruins are more weird than that, we need to look at what they are. Literally, the ruins I'm talking about in this video are man-made structures that are abandoned and no longer serve their functionality and are being ruined, either by nature or some other forces. In Breath of the Wild, these ruins not only help in building the atmosphere and the deep world of the game, it also reflects the situation of the said world itself. The ruins, once a space for society, now an abandoned series of stone, slowly being reclaimed by nature. Likewise, the kingdom itself was once a space of civilization, now in ruins as the calamity looms over what remains. But also, the ruins possess a unique set of aesthetic qualities. To examine this, I'd like to look at a 1994 manga that I read a couple of weeks ago. You see, I'm not a slice of life kind of guy. Don't get me wrong, I don't mind a good piece of naturally occurring solid mass or aggregate of minerals or mineraloid matter or run with the wind, but it's not my usual go-to when it comes to anime or manga. But a couple of weeks ago I came across a manga called Yokohama Kaidashi Kikou that really intrigued me. It was a calm slice of life containing these slices of the life of Alpha, a robot who runs a quiet countryside cafe whose quote-unquote owner left on a journey that they may never come back from. It's very wholesome and heartwarming, and nothing serious really ever happens in the manga. Each chapter is a 5-minute read about something really ordinary, like 2 people cooking and eating rice, 2 kids walking around the wild, going for a swim into the underwater ruins, and returning with a green glass bottle. But an interesting aspect of it that I left out while introducing it is that it takes place in a post-apocalyptic Japan, hence the underwater ruin. A future where cities have been drowned by the ocean and humanity is sparse, although not that sparse. What exactly happened to the world is not really explained at all, for the very simple reason that it doesn't really matter. The manga is a meditation on life experience. Alpha, being a robot who can never really die, she can go on and on until the end of time, or at the very least till the end of the last human who can maybe repair her if she needs to be repaired. Which is why Alpha's unique outlook on the time past and the concept of nostalgia is so compelling. As time goes on in the manga, we see people grow old, places getting more and more consumed by vegetation. The manga puts you in Alpha's position as an entity that forever will be an outsider to the humans around her, as time, the fourth dimension, doesn't really affect her like how it does to other humans. There is a moment in the second volume of the manga where Alpha and her doctor sit on an elevated structure from which they are able to see the ocean below. As time passes and the day transitions into night, something incredible happens. The streetlights of the streets that were drowned by the ocean a long time ago, that so far we have seen as poking out of the water, begin to light up, to form this incredible scenery. Just looking at Alpha's reaction, you can understand that there is a very strong emotion in this little moment. Those ruins underwater, they were normal neighborhoods and streets. People used to live in them, and they probably formed a bustling city. And although what awaited them was ultimate destruction or death, that is symbolized by nature or the ocean reclaiming the land, there is still a hint of optimism that even after all these years, those lights still turn on. That even if the people have disappeared, the structures they built, even though impractical now, still do their part by existing. That's why the ruins of Hyrule in Breath of the Wild oozes an aura of sorrow. They still are symbols of retaliation, of perseverance. Whatever the calamity brought forth, it did not wipe them all out. They still exist in pieces, yes, but they are still fighting for existence against nature, against death. Nostalgia plays a huge role in Yokohama shopping list as well. As I said before, Alpha is a robot who does not age and therefore does not experience time like we humans do. But what's even more central to her character is that she is incredibly human. Just look at this shot of her reaction to the aforementioned lights scene. There's so much emotion that's portrayed in her face that I can't even begin to describe it. Just realized that that's not really a huge deal in the manga industry, or at least not in a subset of the industry. Fun fact. Okay. The manga comes back to this nostalgia over and over again in its volume. There's one chapter where Alpha goes on a dive in the underground ruins and she brings back a glass bottle, and the old man and her doctor, who are both college mates during their time, reflect nostalgically on a time when they both went on a little trip to a road that was being closed off. And the sub-story ends 3 chapters later with the doctor telling Alpha to really make the best of what she has in the present. Although you could take this as a carpe diem in a 15-year-old boy's Instagram bio level of campiness, it doesn't come across as such. There's a real earnestness to it that's a result of the setting the story is based in. There is a quality of nostalgia in the ruins as well. Reading Princess Zelda's diary and the research notes in the ruined Hyrule Castle, there is a certain sense of nostalgia there. How she and Link roam around the grounds, and her father's relationship, all in the middle of this ruined castle that now homes monsters and the calamity itself. Hell, the Zonai tribe, who take an important role in Tears of the Kingdom, were originally theorized to have existed by many theorists and YouTubers due to their ruined statues and labyrinths being able to be explored in the game years before the Zonai were ever introduced in Tears of the Kingdom. The ruins are in Yokohama and Breath of the Wild, these cloudy memories of a time and space long past us. They aren't clear enough to recall the complete story behind them, yet they evoke a certain sensation within us. A serene, calming, yet melancholic sensation with a tinge of wishing to go back to that past time. The ruins are objects that evoke a strange sense of nostalgia. This sensation is also felt in Dark Souls, but we'll get into that later. Back a couple of years ago, I went down into the living room in my house, and on the TV was playing a tourist show. My grandparents watched this show every day for 30 minutes, and I sometimes watched along with them because, well, I obviously don't go out of the house much. What was being shown caught my eye. You see, what I saw looked like something out of a post-apocalyptic video game. Something out of The Last of Us. The person with the camera went inside these ruined buildings where there laid footwear and other accessories of little kids. It was a nursery. There were little desks and chairs as well. Later he found a playground of sorts with this rusty and busted Ferris wheel. There were trees growing in the middle of public spaces, and buildings were slowly but surely being invaded by vegetation. The place is not really an obscure location whatsoever. What I was watching was a tour of the abandoned Ukrainian town Pripyat, 2 miles away from Chernobyl. The town itself was completely abandoned shortly after the Chernobyl disaster took place and still contains traces of above average radiation. Although most of the buildings were looted after it was abandoned, what we see in Pripyat is a snapshot of objects left behind by time. The buildings and playgrounds are still there, still yearning to be used, but what they get instead is the slow takeover of nature and the decay of these spaces. The ruins are nothingness. A ruin, before becoming a ruin, is a man-made structure that was specifically made for a purpose. They are spaces intended to be used by humans as a means to their various ends. But for a structure to be considered a ruin, the structure must experience ruination, and ruination can only occur to human-used spaces when humans no longer use them. This is why I say they are left behind by time, or that they are nothingness. These are buildings that were meant to be occupied by people, now shattered or slowly breaking apart due to the emptiness they were not made for. This is why there is an ever-present sense of despair in the ruins. That although its existence means retaliation, it also means certain defeat. The town underwater is nothing but a big mass of corpse, and the Temple of Time is a carcass of worship. I've talked about Dark Souls before on this channel. It's a very difficult game, very philosophical, very raw, and it's one of the best video games ever made and one of my favorites. The aesthetics of Dark Souls has a lot to do with this video's topic. As of course, in Dark Souls, you are an undead being wandering through a world that's slowly decaying. Most of the locations you come across are abandoned, except of course for undeads who have gone hollow and attack you. There are structures ranging from the catacombs to fortresses, shrines, castles, and even cities. None, of course, being in their original state after being constructed. Every structure in Dark Souls has been broken and destroyed. Moss and ivy climb the old walls of stone and wood. The world design of Dark Souls uses the ruins to add to the sense of loneliness and dread in the face of the entropic end of life. The ruins encapsulate this concept with their very being. The ruins themselves are on the way to non-existence. They exist in a liminal space between life and death. Not quite dead as their remains lay out for us to see and observe, but not quite alive either, as they can no longer be used for what they were built for. It's this middle point of a vague, frustrating, some might even say useless existence. An existence that serves the theme of Dark Souls itself. That being the flame, after burning for centuries on end, now tired, slowly coming into a grinding halt, only for the gods to try and preserve this worn-out flame, only prolonging their own excruciating existences. So far, the ruins are a lot of things. They are life in that they were built by man to fulfill his needs, and they still do exist in some form. But they are also dead since they are abandoned and they no longer serve their purpose and are slowly being eaten by nature. They are hope in that they evoke nostalgia and also despair, since they remind us of our own inevitable end. They are life and they are death. When you think about them dialectically like this, you begin to identify the ruins as an entity of their own. Not a building that is destroyed, but a ruin. A brand new object different from the earlier definitions that's the synthesis of nature and humans. Perhaps that's why there is a certain allure to them. We humans too are product of humans and nature. Perhaps the ruins speak to us on a more innately emotional level that's hard to grasp because they are not so different from ourselves. We are a constant battleground between life and death. We are a treasure trove of nostalgia and memories, a record of life and death past us. We too are ugly, broken, and imperfect, but majestic nonetheless. And above all, there is a certain vibe of sublime in the ruins. These are fortresses, dungeons, temples, and cities that have stood the test of time, outliving the people who have built them and used them. The ruins are a measure of mankind, a measure of human art and ingenuity. The ruins are also not made at one point in time, but are perpetually being made. This is why facing the ruins in Zelda felt so mystical. This is why Alpha reacts like this upon seeing the lights turn on. The ruins are a unique entity of their own, one that is close to humanity more than we seem to realize. We are the ruins. Subscribe and like and follow me on Twitter and yeah, assuming that I'm talking to someone, thank you for making it all the way through to this point in this video. With that said, I'd like to conclude this video right here, right now. Bye-bye.